Well, I want to begin by expressing my condolences to the family and friends of Mr. Joseph Daniels. I think it's quite clear that his death is a great loss to his family, to the community of Marquette University. It can't be undone. Outside of gun violence, disregard for traffic laws, poor driving is the #1 safety hazard in this community. I'm not going to include Mr. Jordan with all the people that are fleeing the police, putting cars in trees and homes and businesses, leading extended chases, but there are concerning violations of the law here. And I think we've gotten a little bit more full picture of the defendant today than I previously had. And in his letter today, he stated to the family, "Your husband was a man I wish I could be." I think we'd have to go a long way to find someone who fulfilled not only his own potential, but helped his family obtain their full potential, and really was an exemplar of the Jesuit values that he embraced and lived by. Some of these letters make reference to, he's some kind of intoxicated guy staggering into the street, and somehow, he bears some bulk of responsibility. That is ridiculous. It's unwarranted. There's no evidence to support that. And listen, I cross 10th Street every day, usually a couple times. I got a sign right in my crosswalk there. It says, "All vehicles must yield." I can't tell you how many times I'll be dead right now if I cross that crosswalk having faith in that sign. In fact, that sign's been run over a few times. So if you hit someone in the crosswalk, you're at fault. The #1 job of driving is to keep a proper lookout. And I don't know what the speed was here. There have been some references made. I have a very hard time believing that this kind of injury and this kind of impact and this kind of flight of a body would occur at 30 miles an hour. Now, Ms. Hill reference perhaps was 40, perhaps was 45. I don't know. I'm not going to try and determine that today, but I am confident that he was not driving 30 miles an hour at the time of impact. Certainly, as it relates to Mr. Jones, well, let me talk to the family first. The children of Mr. Daniels, I know what it's like to lose a parent at an early age. And I believe I was 23 when my father died. Now, he wasn't killed by someone, but the loss is similar. And as the former district attorney told me at the funeral, and especially to the sons of Mr. Daniels, when your father's not there, that's when you got to become a man. And E. Michael McCann lost his father at a very young age. And I understood that at the time. This was a long time ago, but it doesn't feel that long ago. I think that's what is in store here for Bill and others, sons and daughters of the deceased. Now, that's not to discount, of course, what kind of a person your mother is and her abilities. I think those are quite clear. This is the kind of marriage that I think all indications are people dream about, that everybody would want for themselves or their children. And at this point, you're left with being grateful for what you had. And you did have a lot more than many ever get. That doesn't say that anything about this was right, but it's still the truth. So, you know, I agree. Mr. Jones is certainly not among the worst. There's no indication of that. But as indicated, yes, many young people have the instinct to do the wrong thing at the heat of the moment. But, and so that might explain what happened that night. It does not explain why he wasn't at the police station in the morning, that day, the next day. There was plenty of time to think about this and make a decision. Now, this case, based on the facts as I've understood them, is a little bit unique in that it does not really lend itself to a variety of criminal liabilities. And I'm satisfied that Ms. Hill has done her due diligence. She's an experienced prosecutor. She knows what she's doing. And if she doesn't believe that this was a case where reckless homicide charges could be brought, then I accept that. There is a gray area here. Frankly, this is not a strong hit-and-run case either. Hit-and-run cases are typically based upon people leaving the scene and not returning. Not crossing the street is generally not a function of measuring, are they 300 feet away or 400 feet away. The intent of it is that you remain on the scene. Now, of course, that's mitigated by the fact that if you don't provide any useful information, that mitigates, you know, what you've done by remaining on the scene. And of course, it was a poor reflection on your character to try and throw your girlfriend under the bus here at the scene in the days following. That perhaps was based on, well, certainly it was based on some level of self-interest, selfishness. But I think it was also largely based upon immaturity. And so ultimately you did accept responsibility here, and I don't want to minimize that because I have to tell the family, you know, this could have been a couple, 2-3 years till this case gets to trial. I've got so many cases backed up right now, and we've got about 170 people sitting in this jail on homicide charges, and I'm essentially responsible for about a quarter of those. And so, not because I don't want to try these cases, but there would have been a significant delay. And I hope that at least by pleading guilty here, that the family is able to reach some level of closure, at least legally. I think it would have been more difficult to just have court date after court date for another year or two. And I have other people in that situation. I've seen the stress that it's brought to them. So I do credit Mr. Jordan in that regard. He doesn't have a record of violence. And as we've learned in the interim, there is a history of sexual abuse. I know his mother has had substantial challenges legally, I believe also related to substance abuse. In addition to that, obviously, Mr. Jones has not had the benefit really of any father, much less the kind of father that Joseph Daniels was. So it's not an excuse. He's still accountable for what you do. But, you know, unless we're just going to say everybody that fits in this square hole gets sentence X, that's what we have these gatherings for, to try and base sentences based on who is in front of us, as well as who's been affected, as well as the community, the extent to which the community has been effective. And in this case, there's no escaping how great a loss his passing has been. And he certainly was a tough man based upon the medical challenges that he overcome. I have no question about his work ethic because when you're raised on a farm, You either get it or you get out. And I've known a number of people that have made successes of themselves based on a rural background, and they tend to have that quality in common. So there's nothing I can do here to really, I can't replace them, obviously. I can't bring them back. And even if I give Mr. Jones a maximum, I think that's of limited satisfaction, ultimately. Whether he gets a few months more or a few months less, I don't find that significant in the end. What I do find significant is the fact that this happened while he was on supervision. You know, it just defies logic that people can think they're going to open up a car dealership and constantly go to the car auction and get vehicles and not get a license. I mean, I can't think of too many things more ignorant than that. And apparently he had the ability to get a license. So it wasn't like he had some kind of year or two revocation for driving drunk or something. It's a business expense. You got to get a license. And I believe this was happening routinely. I don't know that there was ever any cessation of driving. He did ultimately get one, which is good. But again, you know, when you get pulled over for doing 93 miles an hour while you're out on bail for a case in which your driving killed somebody, that's kind of a red flag that you don't quite get it yet. I think most people who are out on bail on even a non-criminal first offense drunk driving case would probably start driving the speed limit, maybe stopping at stop signs. I know a lot of people don't, but that's kind of a minimum indicator that there's some appreciation here for what I've pled guilty to and what I need to do with regard to driving. Driving like this is more of a statement that I haven't done anything wrong, I'm not doing anything wrong, there's nothing wrong with my driving. And I think most of us know that have driven for any length of time, people don't usually get in the vehicle one day and just decide, you know what, I'm going to drive 93 miles an hour. People kind of drive the same way from day to day, in most cases. I haven't heard of any particularly compelling reason why on this, the date that he got pulled over doing this kind of speed, what the problem was. But it just is indicative, as it was, when you miss not one but two appointments with the pre-sentence writer. I mean, I can't think of many things worse that could have been done short of committing another crime. And I've known Mr. Webb for a long time. I'm sure he delivered the correct messages. I'm sure he did so after the first missed appointment. So what the disconnect was there, I don't know, but it does not put you in a good light. I acknowledge that, unlike many others, he did not, you know, tell the pre-sentence writer, this is what I should get, that's what I should get, I shouldn't be in jail, I should just get this amount, I really didn't do anything. You know, I read that almost every week in one report or another. I don't think, I have no reason to believe at this time that Mr. Jones is beyond rehabilitation. And there are a lot of people that come through this court that I can't say that about. He's had a tough go of it, I think by anyone's estimation. To grow up sexually abused and without a father is not something we wish on anybody. And between that and the struggles that his mother's had with substance abuse, there was not a lot of support here. Now, I'm not trying to judge his mother because I think she's done everything she could in the interim, except getting him to this appointment or making sure he got to it and, you know, making sure the license was obtained in a timely fashion. But in other respects, I think she has been there for him, will continue to be there for him when many others have not. And as I understood it, he was also had potential as a student and as a ball player. So clearly, things have gone the wrong way in the last few years, beginning with the dealing of marijuana in that case, but also some of these uncharged incidents where there have been, I believe he was stopped in a vehicle with a weapon and drugs. On another occasion, I believe in 2018 in the report, that there was a carrying concealed weapon at some point that was not charged. There were no weapons in this vehicle, and I've heard no other incidents in that regard. So I do believe that there is an opportunity for rehabilitation here, but it is going to take some work, and there is a point at which, well, certainly there is more than sufficient need to send a message to the community here, and I've been trying to do that for about 3 or 4 years now with regard to the driving and its toll on the community, and also with respect to the losses of the university.